This program is brought to you by the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii, a nonprofit organization dedicated to sharing with the community the many benefits of a vegetarian diet. Free monthly meetings include vegetarian experts found locally and on the mainland, quick and easy cooking demonstrations, and healthful and delicious food samples. Members enjoy an informative quarterly newsletter, social activities, and discounts at many vegetarian-friendly restaurants and health food stores. For an application, call 944-8344. That's 944-8344. Or visit our website at www.vsh.org. vsh.org.
Aloha, and welcome to the monthly public presentation of the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii. Since 1990, the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii has been following our mission of promoting human health, animal rights, and protection of the environment by means of vegetarian education. Well, I'd like to encourage those of you who are not yet members, and even those of you who are not yet vegetarians, to join the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii tonight. You'll receive an informative newsletter, as well as discounts on Oahu, Maui, Kauai, and the Big Island at many vegan and vegetarian-friendly restaurants, businesses, and groceries, such as at down-to-earth organic and natural stores. You'll also be supporting events such as tonight's, which are not only made possible, but free to the community as well, through your membership dues and donations. Vegetarian Society of Hawaii members and friends can also enjoy popular social events such as the delightful Christmas get-together held on December 3 last Tuesday, when VSH's year-old Imagine a Vegan World vegan support group held a delightful Christmas get-together at Govinda's with about 30 people attending. At this time, I'd like to recognize some of our hard-working volunteers. We have Dr. Fred Foster at the reception table, along with Randy, I believe. We have Patrick and Sirlak at the literature table. And we're going to have Soha, Christy, and Will helping Dr. Carl Seff over in the kitchen tonight as well. And we have quite a few other people to thank, but I'm just going to mention Matt here, who does our Facebook page, and I hope you're really enjoying all the posts he's been doing and the fabulous links. We'd also like to invite you to stay after tonight's talk to enjoy samples of vegan dishes donated by the generosity of Down to Earth. We're recording tonight's presentation for broadcast on the VSH TV series Vegetarian, which appears on some public access channels across the state, including on Oahu's Olelo Oceanic Channel 55 and Hawaiian Telecom Channel 52 on Wednesday mornings at 11 a.m. and on some Thursdays at 6 p.m. You can also view videos of this and many of our other past presentations on our website, www.vsh.org, where you'll find many other resources, including our famous dining guide. It's now time for our special guest. We're delighted to welcome our own Ruth Heidrich, PhD. Dr. Heidrich received her PhD in health management in 1993 and is the author of A Race for Life, Chef Cookbook, Senior Fitness, and the just published Lifelong Running. She has completed 6 Ironman triathlons, 67 marathons, and has won 8 gold medals in the Senior Olympics. She has won more than 900 trophies and medals since her diagnosis of breast cancer in 1982 at the age of 47. She is a certified fitness trainer and has set 3 world records for fitness for her age group at the renowned Cooper Clinic in Dallas, Texas. She is one of the founding members and past president of the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii, past president of the Mid-Pacific Roadrunners Club, and life member of both organizations. I am thrilled to say that she has also recently rejoined the board of the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ruth Heidrich.
I am thrilled to be here. I don't know if any of you have heard this saying before. Education is the most powerful tool there is to change the world. Isn't that true? Education. You know who said this? Nelson Mandela. This is my tribute to him. What is the number one killer of Americans in this, the number one killer of not just Americans, Western countries? What? Heart disease? No. Cancer? No. Ignorance. Ignorance. If people knew what to eat, there would be no heart disease. If they knew what to eat, there'd be very little cancer, because most of the cancers are diet related. How many think that a balanced diet is the best diet? A balanced diet is a Diet Coke here and a donut there. Balanced, right? How many have heard that there are no bad foods, that you just have them in moderation? You heard that? Well, if you like moderate rates of heart disease and moderate rates of cancer, moderate diet will do it for you. What we talk about here is a 100% plant-based diet. I'm going to get into what I talk about here, just to kind of give you a timeline. I started running in 1968 after reading a book called Aerobics. Any of you old enough to remember? Oh, there are a couple. Yes. When I saw that book, I thought, this is interesting. I'd never seen that title before, so I bought it, took it home, and was fascinated. Found out there were so many benefits to running head to toe, and I wanted to take part in all of them. I was probably as fit as anybody, certainly fitter than anybody I knew, because I was, at this point in 1982, had been running 14 years, and daily running, and loved it. I never missed a day. I got into racing, which was a lot of fun, because back then, you know how many women there were in the 60s running? So most of the races I came home with a gold medal. So that was part of when I got the 900, because there wasn't a lot of competition. As more women started running, they had age groups. So I kept aging up, and so kept winning. And when I get to be 100, you know how many competitors I'll have? I don't think any. So being so fit and thinking that I really was eating a good diet, I had taken a college nutrition course back in, I hate to say, 1952 was my first year of university. And I was told that you need lots of animal protein, chicken and fish is good for you, and low-fat dairy. So my diet was lots of that, and I thought that I was really healthy. Keep in mind the education theme, because education is a powerful tool, and we certainly need more of it. I came across this saying, what is wildly overestimated is how hard it is to go vegan. Just yesterday, I was talking to one of the tradespeople in our building. He was working on the fire alarm system, and he was in the apartment installing this fire alarm, and it was in the trophy room, and my trophies are all lined up. He's looking at that, and I said, yes, vegan diet, that's how you win all these trophies. And he said, well, I know it's good for you, but it's too hard to do. And I said, hard? It isn't, it's easy. So what's overestimated is how hard it is, and I want to talk about how easy it is once you see all the advantages. And also underestimated is how very much it matters. How very much it matters, not just to us individually, our own health, but the environment. We are fouling our nest big time, and it's primarily all the animals that are being, if you're an environmentalist, you know what's happening to our water and our land and the trees, and also the animals, the cruelty. If you love animals, you want the best for them, and you don't want to see them, I think of the term humanely raised. There's no such thing that exploits them. What did you come to learn? What drew you here tonight? Obesity is a big-time problem, right? I run every day, and I go by elementary schools occasionally, junior high, and I'm seeing obese children. First graders, obese. And we also know that by the time they're 2 years old, they're beginning to have streaks of plaque in their arteries. And education, again, this is why they're being fed the wrong foods. If you want the answer to weight control, a raw vegan diet will do it. You can eat as much as you want and get fully satisfied. And assuming you do it right, there are a few guidelines: fruits and vegetables. Those are the guidelines. And weight control is easy. You want to get more fit? What it takes to run a marathon or an Ironman triathlon, lots of carbohydrates. You don't get very far on protein. You get a little ways on fat, but it's carbohydrates, the plant foods. The fruits and vegetables is what gives you the diet to have you run and be more fit. Do you want to eat a healthier diet? Well, you know, we talked about balanced. I have to laugh every time people say, eat a balanced diet. What are you balancing? Fruits versus vegetables. And then, of course, want to save money. I hear this all the time, that, oh, it's so expensive to eat vegan, or fresh fruits and vegetables cost so much money. Well, I do my shopping at the farmers markets as much as I can, organic preferably, but fruits and vegetables from our farmers. We need to support our farmers. I remember during World War II, growing up here, there were victory gardens because the whole island was militarized and the shipping was strictly military, and we were encouraged to grow victory gardens. And then after the war, we got away from it. It's too bad. I'd like to see us go back. Just a summary of what I'm going to talk about: why vegan, why raw, why run, and how to save money. I was walking through a pharmacy the other day, and I started with A, antacids, and went all the way down to Z for zits. And I had to chuckle. I don't need that, I don't need that, I don't need that, you don't need any of these things. And probably you can think of a few things that I didn't put on here. There are just so many different patent medicines, and some of you might question deodorants. What do you mean? Well, did you know vegans smell better? It's the animal foods that are being excreted through your pores that is the cause of most BO. And in fact, in Japan, they call Americans as a whole butter people, because we smell differently when we eat animals. And that goes not just for body odor, but all odors, top to bottom. And that's all I'm going to say about that one. You also don't need prescription medications as a rule. There's one exception. I was running Sunday. It's going around Punch Bowl. Went up Ward Avenue, and I was running Sunday, and two dogs came charging out at me. And one took a big chunk out of my leg, one of the hazards. And I wasn't going to mention this because I certainly don't want to discourage anybody from running. In 45 years of running, the first time this ever happened. If I'd thought faster, I would have outrun the dogs. I was so stunned that I didn't. So the point is, I did have to have a prescription medicine. I was delighted that my doctor took a look at the leg and he said, there was no puncture and it's going to heal just fine, but we're going to put you on antibiotics. So with a good diet and an exercise program, you're going to feel so much better. You aren't going to need sleeping medications. You can probably think of all kinds of things and so many different benefits. The vegan diet is whole food, plant-based, but that can mean different things to different people too. That can mean, primarily plants, but a little bit of fish or a little bit of yogurt or whatever. I believe that it should be plants, 100% plants. And the closer they come out of the ground, the sooner you can eat them, the better they are for you. So whole food, plant-based. I eat very little refined processed food. In fact, in my book, A Race for Life, I say, if it has a face, don't eat it. If it has a mother, don't eat it. If it has a label, don't eat it, because I want the whole food. and lots of leafy greens. When I was working in the 1988 Seoul Olympics, great privilege to be able to do that, working with the athletes, and got to eat in the Olympic town. And as I had my own meals, I walked around the different sections. They had the American section, the Western, McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken. And then they had each different country with their own cuisine. And I noticed that so many of them had vegetables like leafy greens as part of their breakfast. And I'd also studied the Kenyans and what they ate, and the Tarahumara, who are the running people. That's what the Tarahumara means. These running people exist primarily on squash and corn, and they can do 48-hour runs. They're incredible. I describe them in my books too. So I started eating kale as part of my breakfast, and I love it. It is so, see raised eyebrows. Yeah, kale, it's healthy, it's good for you, and there's so many different varieties. They're all great. CHEF is my acronym for cheap, healthy, easy, and take your choice, fast or fat-free. And the reason for the raw is because it's so darn easy. There's very little, well, start with shopping and your menu planning. There's nothing to it. You just grab a whole bunch of fruits and vegetables and chop them up if you want. Otherwise, you can just take a bite out of them. I'm a low-class vegan in that I don't do a lot of preparation. It's wash them, cut them up, and eat them, and they are really good. There's a few things you can't eat raw, but beans. Okay, I don't have very many beans, but the reason a lot of people eat beans is because they think they need to get more protein in their diet. All plants have all the amino acids that we need. And if you're getting enough calories from the foods that you eat, you're going to be getting enough protein. You're going to be getting the right kinds of fats. The omega-3s are in leafy greens, and maybe some nuts and seeds, although I keep my diet pretty low fat because of the breast cancer. So the CHEF is my cookbook, which was written because when I started giving talks, almost 30 years ago, people started asking, well, how much of this do you use, and how do you fix that, and all kinds of questions. And they said, you ought to have a cookbook. So that's what CHEF is, standing for cheap, healthy, easy, fast, and fat-free. And exercise, obviously, you know that I think a low-fat vegan diet is the best diet for exercise. It gives you the carbohydrates that you need. You store up the glycogen in your liver, glucose in the blood, and then glycogen for your muscles. And why running? Well, running is the most effective and efficient exercise there is. Effective and efficient. Walking is good if you can't run, but it takes twice as long to get the same amount of exercise. And it's hard to really get your heart pumping. You really need to do something that causes enough exertion to raise the heart rate and get you breathing hard and sweating. Running will do that in just a few minutes. So, myths about running. I think you've all heard them. In fact, I have even had a number of medical doctors tell me that I shouldn't run. You know, this is after I'd done a bunch of marathons. They say running is bad on the joints. And that's why I've written my fourth book, Lifelong Running, Overcoming the 11 Myths About Running. One of them is that running really is good for your joints. Most of the joint problems people have are from the diet. If you're eating animal foods, that is increasing your risk for arthritis, both rheumatoid and osteoarthritis. Of the 11 myths, the first one that I like is, but I'm not a runner. We are all runners. If you, at the elementary school that I mentioned earlier, if you look on the playground, do you see any walkers? They're all running. And in fact, that reminds me of when I was in high school, I was a lifeguard. And my job was not saving people from drowning. It was blowing the whistle, telling kids not to run. That was the main job, because we are all runners. Some of us have just gotten away from it, and you're never too old. There's a long-term study being done at Stanford University. There are roughly 1,000 subjects in this study, half runners and half non-runners, and they are tracking us. And I say us because I'm thrilled to be one of those runners. And these runners have been running for probably 20, 30 years. They all have thousands of miles under their belts, and they're following them. And what they're finding is that any kind of age-related disability is delayed by 10 years. That knee replacements in non-runners is 7 times higher than runners. Hip replacements and other joint replacements aren't common in runners at all. These are diet-related and non-exercise-related problems. So there are so many of these different benefits. Osteoporosis is a concern for a lot of women, men too, but the focus has been on women. And I think most postmenopausal women, when they go see a general practitioner, are being advised to either have a bone density test or start taking one of the bone building drugs like Fosamax or Boniva. And of course what they're finding is the side effects of these drugs are horrible. Jaw necrosis, meaning the jawbone starts to disintegrate from lack of blood supply. Hip fractures in the hip, the part of the femur that goes into the hip joint, the neck is narrower, and those are fracturing. The femur fractures, it's just, anyway, the way to have strong bones is to stress them. And so that's one of the myths that people have, is that impact is bad for your bones. I say just the opposite. Impact is good for your bones. This pounding, doing this. There's a little tiny piezoelectric effect that goes right up starts at the feet, goes all the way up the spine. Stimulates the osteoblasts, which are the bone building cells. That's how you keep strong bones. No drugs and no animal protein, not even dairy. You do not need dairy to have strong bones. In fact, the countries that consume the most dairy have the most hip fractures. Do you know that? If anybody says you need yogurt or low-fat milk to get enough calcium and have strong bones, tell them this: the countries that have the highest consumption of dairy, highest hip fractures. In terms of the heart is a muscle. And the way you exercise it effectively and efficiently is by using it, running up Ward Avenue or running as fast as you can, or endurance, running as long as you can. There were 3,000 people ran the marathon Sunday, and think of what the good they were doing for their bones, making strong bones, a healthy heart. The lungs get more efficient at extracting oxygen when you stress it. When you go overboard a little bit, it gets more efficient, pulls oxygen. And muscles, of course, one of the things that running does is strengthen the quadriceps and the calves, and these are the muscles above and below the knee. And if you keep those muscles really strong, you are protecting your knee. And most knee injuries in runners would be from a twisting, something like racquetball, some kind of an accident. But just the straight running is really good for the muscles and the joints. Dementia is something I think many of you have probably been reading about, the projected rates of dementia in this country and all the other countries. Have you been reading this? Alzheimer's is on the rise. Most people are not aware that it's a lifestyle disease, that the countries that are the most, I guess, plant-centered because they can't afford the rich diet that most Westerners have the lowest rates of dementia and Alzheimer's. Another advantage to running is that it increases the circulation up to the brain. And circulation is good as long as what you've been eating puts good stuff in the bloodstream for the brain. So I mentioned what got me started running. It was a book. There's an old saying, Charlie Jones says, "You are today what you will be in 5 years, except for the books you read and the people you meet." And I have to thank Kenneth Cooper for writing the book Aerobics, started me running. And John McDougall, skip down to the bottom, John McDougall wrote a book, the McDougall Plan, which was the basis for, I had met him before the book was published, but that book has changed the lives of a lot of people. So books have power, the power to educate. In 1982, I'm going to show you some pictures shortly of the before and after, but what I had, besides the cancer diagnosis, was a high cholesterol, high risk of heart disease and a heart attack. I had arthritis. That was diagnosed when I was osteoarthritis when I was about 42 years old and put on drugs, naproxen. Chronic constipation. I didn't know it because I'd been told by a number of doctors that going 3 or 4 times a week is normal for some people. So I thought, well, I was normal. Well, I had to have an operation for a fissure when I was 23 years old. That is not normal, but nobody told me any differently. I had adult acne. I'm in my 40s and I still have acne. And one doctor said, "Oh, no problem, here, take this doxycycline and, a tetracycline, and that'll take care of your acne." Well, he didn't tell me that it was diet. When I was diagnosed with the cancer, you can imagine my shock, being a marathoner, that I had this lump in my breast that turned out to be infiltrating ductal carcinoma, which is a moderately fast-spreading cancer, and was scheduled for chemo and radiation when I happened to see a little note, a 2-line notice in the newspaper, wanted women with breast cancer to participate in diet research study. And having just been diagnosed, I thought, there, I know it's not diet because I told you I already knew a lot about nutrition. I want to find out why I got cancer because the doctors couldn't tell me why. So I got on the phone, got right through to Dr. McDougall. He said, "Get your medical records. I want to talk to you." He was in Kailua, so I show up at his office the next day. He spends 2 hours with me. I walk out a vegan. That's how easy it was. Of course, I had this medical gun to my head, right? Breast cancer, the tumor was this big. I know because I watched the surgery. I insisted, it was an excisional biopsy, and I said, "I want to see what's going on." Doctor said, "No, you don't." "Yes, I do." So I got to watch it and found out almost at the same time he did when they took out the tumor and they took a scalpel and he cut it in half and he says, "Uh-oh." And I said, "What? What do you mean, uh-oh?" And he said, "You see these little gritty things?" He said, "That's microcalcifications. That's not good." So Dr. McDougall said, "I want you to go on this low-fat vegan diet, decline any chemotherapy, radiation, or any hormone therapy, because we want one variable, and we want that variable to be diet. You're going to survive, and we're going to show how powerful diet is." And that was 31 years ago. He was right that it is powerful. Okay, Lorraine mentioned Hawaii 5-0. Remember James MacArthur? I was in the 60s. I was in graduate school at the University of Hawaii, but I also was having fun on the side. I did some acting, I did some modeling, tried out for a number of Hawaii 5-0 episodes, and I made 3 of them. I didn't get a lot of pictures because, it was no big deal then. You just, it's a one-day job or whatever. But I did get this picture with James MacArthur way back in 1968. I was also Miss Falls of Clyde. Anybody know the Falls of Clyde, where it is? Yeah. We put in a lot of effort to save that ship from being sunk. It was going to be part of a reef in the 1960s. And so they had a contest, and they wanted somebody to represent the Falls of Clyde. And so I entered, and I won. Wow. I also got a few other titles. I was married at the time, so I entered Mrs. Hawaii. I got that. I was Mrs. Pacific Yacht Club, got that one, and Miss Maritime. That was fun too, Miss Maritime. Now, I looked healthy there, right? The way I kept my weight down was by going on a Fresca diet. You know what Fresca is? Yeah, that was my diet. That's how I kept my figure slim. And exercise, of course, helped. But you can always eat more than you can burn off, believe me. I think most people find that out. I also had the constipation that I mentioned before. You can't tell by looking, but boy, I had it. The acne was under high cholesterol. All these things were going on in that body that I had no idea until the cancer diagnosis is coming up. Shortly after the cancer diagnosis, when I thought that I might be dying, you know, like, what if the diet doesn't work? I wanted to run on the Great Wall of China. That was a goal of mine, a dream. I thought this would be the most exciting thing to be able to do. So within a year of the diagnosis, I booked a trip to China and ran on the Great Wall of China. What a thrill that was. There's an excerpt of the adventure, because people were watching, you know, all these. This was, you know, 1983, when there weren't a lot of Westerners in China, especially on the Great Wall. They're all staring at me. What? You know, what's this woman running? So anyway, a few started running with me. It was fun. That's the pathology report that said you have cancer. See, that demonstrates a grittiness that told the surgeon right then and there that this was not good. The ducts filled with tumor cells. It had even spread. We didn't find out until later that I had hot spots in my bones. I had elevated liver enzymes, and I still have a tumor encapsulated in my lung, which is so hard to get to surgically. And they said, by the time they figured out what it was, they said, it's been here long enough, it's not growing, let's just watch it. And if your diet is working, it won't grow, and it hasn't. So 2 years later, I did my first Ironman. This is the third one, I guess, third or fourth. And it's the best picture, because to me, what it shows, if you look at that face, that is empowerment, that is excitement, that is a goal that I set up to prove that a vegan diet is powerful, that you don't need any animal products to do what was then, you know, back in '84 when I did my first one, that people couldn't even pronounce the word vegan. In fact, a lot of them still can't pronounce it. But the vegan diet was very rare then. Dave Scott, if you know anything about history, was a, quote, vegetarian, but he had cottage cheese, I don't know what other, called himself vegetarian, he was not vegan. So I was the first vegan to ever do the Ironman triathlon. So that was my major achievement, the one that I'm also very proud of. After I got a little publicity, I was on the cover of Midweek shortly after that as a cancer patient doing the Ironman, a local girl. Continental Airlines called me one day out of the blue and said, "We would like to sponsor you. How would you like to go to Japan and run the Ironman there?" I said, "Wow, whoa, all right." And I did that one. They said, "How would you like to go to New Zealand? They have an Ironman there too, don't they? This is the same year." And I had just done Kona. So I said, "Sure." So, there was no recovery, or very little recovery, because I just kept right on training. Daily running, I mentioned early on that I ran every day, so I train every day. To this day, I am still training every day. Running in different places is pretty exciting. The Great Wall is fun, Japan, New Zealand. But running in Mexico, I just went out from the hotel one day, went around a couple of corners and out on the desert, and I came across this fantastic cactus garden. These things are gigantic, 30 feet high. So I ran back and I got Bob and I said, "Get the camera. We got to get a picture of this." It's one of my favorite pictures. In terms of the effectiveness of a vegan diet, you can, with training, it's not all diet, it's not all training, the combination of both. So this was probably my finest year. I kind of set a goal of looking at what the old record was and decided, I'm going to try to break that. So all these different distances, 5K all the way up to the marathon. And there was also the pentathlon. Well, I thought, why not try that? I was 64 when I did that one. And there was no old record because no woman in her 60s had ever done a pentathlon. So another example of the excitement of just having fun and doing what you can do as long as you're really healthy. We had the Senior Olympics here. Actually, they didn't used to be in Hawaii. I had to go to Nevada to participate in my first Senior Olympics and got some gold medals there, qualified for the Nationals, which were in Arizona, got some more gold medals there. I talk about that in the book Lifelong Running. I was the only contestant from Hawaii. You know how they have the parade of athletes around the stadium, and they had each of the states together with holding their state, like Alabama, Alaska, and there were, like in California, Arizona, hundreds of senior Olympians. So after getting organized for this parade of athletes, I'm looking around for Hawaii, and it's supposed to be just before Indiana. And so I asked, where's the Hawaii contingent? And I got handed this big sign, "You're it." So I get to go into the stadium, lone female, and I do the whole 400-yard circuit with this crowd going crazy. I mean, it was another one of those fantastic moments that I never dreamt could ever happen. I was so choked up. They were interviewing me as I was going around. I couldn't talk. I was just an amazing time. Between Dr. Kenneth Cooper and Dr. John McDougall, I have two doctors that I owe so much to. After I wrote A Race for Life, I sent it to Dr. Cooper and asked him for a comment and hopefully endorsement. And he read it. I got a phone call a few days after, and he said, "I just finished reading your book. I'm amazed. I want you to come to the Cooper Clinic. I want to put you through every test in the book. I want to measure your VO2 max, your everything, blood work." So he put me through the whole test, and he said, "And afterwards, I'm going to give you a chance to set a world fitness record in your age group." And he chuckled, and he says, "I have a feeling you're going to be able to do it." So that was another challenge, and so I kept right on training. In fact, I had done a race in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a 15K, a national championship, and placed in that, and then went from Tulsa to Cooper, and he said, "You're going to be pretty tired. You haven't recovered from that race." And I said, "That's all right. I'll do it anyway." So set a new record there. And Cooper is a master of PR. He had all of the radio and TV stations there. And what he said was, "And she just set a new world record, and she's going to come back next year and break the record she just set." And I looked at him and said, "Whoa, that's pretty gutsy to say that." But of course, I figured I could go one more second longer. So went back the next year, and then when I got in the next age group, I went back again. So I've got an open invitation. When I hit 80 in a year and a half, I'm going to go for the 80-year-old record. Another peak moment, getting to run in Edinburgh, in Scotland, all over. The Loch Ness. I haven't seen the Loch Ness Monster, but I came close. But I don't know how many of you have heard of the Royal Mile. That's from the castle at Edinburgh all the way down to Holyrood. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's the Royal Mile, and so I had to run that. The castles are just fantastic. I really enjoyed Scotland, as I do most other places. Went to Indonesia. You can see in the background, that's a Komodo dragon right there, and there's another Komodo dragon right there. And we're supposed to stay far away. You see the people back there. I got brave and wanted to get closer, and they said, no, that's close enough. So seeing Komodo dragons up close was another fantastic experience. Sydney Harbor Bridge. We did a cruise around the world, and when the ship came cruising into Sydney Harbor, the bridge is famous. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. And then the Opera House, the Sydney Opera House. So we sailed in between. And I'm on the ship, and I look up at that bridge, and I thought, oh, I've got to run on that bridge. I couldn't find anybody to run with me. So I had to, and this is the opening of Chapter 1 in Lifelong Running, getting off the ship and trying to figure out how to get to that bridge. It's not as easy as you would think, because I got off the ship and started running down here, dead end. You know, and the bridge is up there. So anyway, I made it. And going to Morocco, another fantastic place. You've all heard of Rick's Cafe, right? From the movie Casablanca. And I thought, gee, that would be nice to have a picture of that. And that the morning we sailed into Morocco and Casablanca, I went out for my usual morning run, and I thought later I'll find out where Rick's Cafe is. Well, about 3 blocks, you go off the pier, turn right, and we're running along, and there it is. See that in small writing right there, Rick's Cafe. I said, get the camera quick. And here are all these cars going back and forth, so I couldn't really run up to it. There's a fence there. That's as close as I got to Rick's Cafe in Casablanca. Dune 7 is this gigantic sand dune. It's the largest, longest sand dune in the world. You purposely can't see me other than this tiny little speck, because I wanted to show the enormity of this and the fun of running up a sand dune. You imagine you go up 2 steps and slide back 3, you know. But I actually made it up that far when the tour bus was getting ready to leave. So I told Bob, quick, get a picture. And here are, let me see, some of the 900 trophies. This one is the first place New Zealand Ironman. You can't really see it because it's glass. First place in the Japan Ironman. The Golden Shoe Award, Runner's World Magazine. Surprise, I had no idea it was coming. They had a luncheon, the quarterback club, and I got presented with this size 14 Golden Shoe Award, which was pretty neat. And that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about, other than to show you Forks Over Knives, an incredible film. If you haven't seen it, do see it. I've got copies of it. So here's what they had me do. I had been a runner for 14 years, in fact, a marathoner. 47 years old, at the top of my game.
In 1982, Ruth Heidrich's running career came to a sudden stop when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. After a mastectomy, her doctors recommended chemotherapy and radiation to treat the cancer that had by then spread to her lungs and bones. Ruth decided to visit Dr. John McDougall instead.
And I said, Ruth, I spent my residency collecting information on diet and breast cancer. And it's all in these files right here. Sit in my office and read through it and see what you think.
He said, these are the studies that show what I'm trying to prove is that diet can reverse breast cancer.
And she read it, and she comes out and she says, okay, I've changed my diet. She changed her diet.
So he showed me how to eat, no added oils, lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains.
Ruth then started training for the Ironman Triathlon in Hawaii, which combines running a marathon with long-distance biking and swimming.
I became obsessed. Kept up the running, of course, never stopped, and then added swimming, biking, and for good measure, lifted weights. And people were saying, you're crazy. You're a cancer patient. You should be resting. Doctors told me this. I felt so good. I felt fit. And I wanted to maintain that level of fitness. And I felt sure that if I had a healthy body and I was putting the right food into it, that I could beat this cancer.
At the Ironman Triathlon, Ruth won a gold medal in her age group.
Stuck with the diet, found out my arthritis disappeared, my constipation disappeared, my dandruff disappeared. No sign of depression, which you might expect with a cancer diagnosis. I felt renewed, invigorated, and out to show that diet is so much more important than anybody ever thought.
Other women get over breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer. There are people who have had metastatic prostate cancer all over the body who have gone through what we call spontaneous remission. In other words, they've been cured. And it's not the end of the world when you get this diagnosis. Some people get over it. Ruth did.
So I'm still racing, still daily training. Now, how many people in their 70s are doing triathlons? Not very many. So that gives hope for all of us as we age, that not only will you stay healthy and beat the degenerative diseases that most people get, but you can start collecting medals. Are there any questions? Anybody have some burning, how, why, whenever, what? Yes. So you do, Derry. Your question has to do with joint problems, right? If, as I mentioned, if you keep the muscles above and below strong, they protect the joint. And so that's why I think exercise is really important. But you also have to have a non-animal protein diet because, well, animal fats are inflammatory. Animal protein is also, arthritis, inflammatory. So I've had accidents. I've been hit twice while on the bike by trucks. Things happened. The body has some damage, but you recover. That was one of the other things that doctors noticed was my recovery time from fractures. I have a titanium rod in my left leg, and they said I wouldn't be able to run for 6 to 8 weeks. Well, within 3 weeks I was running. So you do recover a lot faster. I'm not sure if that answers your question. But no bones, no. Even as she asked if I was even a vegan, did I have any bones problem? And no, good bone density, and yeah, as far as I know, it's still going strong. Thank you. Any other questions? Corn and squash, yeah, and I did mention that earlier. Okay, the Tarahumara live in copper canyons in Mexico. They're very isolated people and very shy, reticent, but they run. They live on cliffs, and their children never stop running. They run all their lives. And because they're poor and subsistence living, they grow corn, squash, and that makes up the primary diet. Once a year, they may have a celebration and have a goat or a chicken. But basically, it's corn and squash is their diet. And I mentioned they do 48-hour races. And I did get to Copper Canyons because I wanted to see these people and run with them. The book, Born to Run by Christopher McDougall, has anybody read that book? It's an excellent book. And it talks a lot about the Tarahumara and their diet. pretty much has to be corn and squash. That's all that grows there. And they take the corn and grind it up and carry it in little pouches around their waist. And when they're ready to eat, they get some water and mix it up, and that's their meal. Okay, her question has to do with, she understands the value of fruits and vegetables, but nuts and seeds and avocados have so-called, and olive oil have so-called healthy fats. And in my case, I need to keep my fat down around 10%. And it doesn't take many nuts to boost the fat content really up high. And so, in general, I avoid nuts and seeds. Avocado, 85% fat. And I don't need that much fat. I get it from my leafy greens primarily. Well, all plants have some fat. And in fact, I think if you were to throw them all together, average all fruits, vegetables, you would come up with pretty close to an 80-10-10. 80% carbohydrate, 10% fat, 10% protein. And I'm on a breast cancer diet. I'm not convinced that it wouldn't come back if I were to go back to a standard American diet. I think it would, because you never get rid of all the cancer cells. So in terms of olive oil, that's a refined, highly refined product. There's nothing in olive oil that you can't get from the leafy green vegetables and the other fruits and vegetables. Running on a torn meniscus. Well, there are all kinds of tears. There are hot zones and cold zones, and sometimes rest, you can recover somewhat. Torn meniscus is a problem. They don't have prosthetic menisci yet. They're working on it, because a torn meniscus, especially the medial meniscus, is fairly common, and it can be from a football injury or racquetball or tennis, some kind of twisting. But if there's pain, then don't run. It's telling you something. If there's no pain, then maybe it won't be a problem. What about supplementing B12, iron, you said, and calcium? Okay, iron and calcium are abundant in leafy greens. Kale, watercress, bok choy, the variety of the Chinese cabbages. I love them. I have them raw. They're my breakfast and dinner, you know. So there's no problem with getting calcium and iron. In fact, if you're taking iron supplements or eating red meat, you're getting too much iron. Too much iron is bad, and men especially can get that, so can postmenopausal women. So you don't need to worry about that. B12 is an open question. I supplement with B12 just because the final answer isn't in yet. I read both sides. In fact, nutrition is still an infant science. You read studies every day. Coffee's good, coffee's bad. You know, all these different disagreements. We're still learning. You know, going back to 1952 when I was told that you need animal protein to be healthy. B12 I do take, and I have a blood test and I make sure that it's high enough. But you know, I've been vegan for 31 years, so. Yes, way in the back. My verdict on coffee, 1 cup a day these days. I have gone, it depends on what I've read most recently. I can give it up. I don't get addicted on 1 cup a day. And what I used to do for so many years was have it only before a race. You know, I'd get that little edge. And when you don't drink coffee, 1 cup of caffeine is like, whoosh. And then I got to the point, well, I have some leftover on Monday morning, so I drink that. And then I thought, then I read that all the antioxidants in coffee, I said, it's good for me, so I have a cup a day, and that's it. I hope that you remember that education is the most powerful tool to change the world, and for goodness sakes, we need a lot of changing. And what's the most common cause of death of heart disease in this country? Ignorance. All right. You've been listening. You passed the quiz, and thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Heidrich, Dr. Ruth Heidrich, for a really inspiring and wonderful talk. Now, all of you go out there and run and, of course, eat vegan food. We'd like to invite you to enjoy a lovely vegan feast by courtesy of Down to Earth. And I'd like to thank everyone for coming. Mahalo for being here, and have a safe return home. Good night, everyone.
This program is brought to you by the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii, a nonprofit organization dedicated to sharing with the community the many benefits of a vegetarian diet. Free monthly meetings include vegetarian experts found locally and on the mainland, quick and easy cooking demonstrations, and healthful and delicious food samples. Members enjoy an informative quarterly newsletter, social activities, and discounts at many vegetarian-friendly restaurants and health food stores. For an application, call 944-8344. That's 944-8344. Or visit our website at www.vsh.org. vsh.org.